I think we'll start. I want to thank each of you for attending the presentation today. I think it's good that we have some people interested in history, and especially in the history of our college. I've had kind of a lifelong interest in history and began researching the history of dentistry more earnestly about 10 years ago. And I think the study of history gives us an appreciation for many of the things that we take for granted, things that often started from humble beginnings. And dental history is largely lost from present-day curricula in schools. So it is nice to be able to take any opportunity to relate some things about our heritage. And so today I want to give you an overview of the history of the college. It may seem a little dry to some of you, but I hope each of you finds something interesting in my story. I'll begin with the events that led up to the founding of the college and bring things up to the present. I'm not going to explore the details in our most recent history. For that, I would refer you to this nice little booklet in the back. We've got quite a few that you can pick up. It's called 125 Years Celebrating Dentistry at Iowa, which was just put out. It's going to become more available about May 11th. I'll have some in the link, but it's a very nicely done thing. It has a lot of the current history in detail about the professorships, the dentist scientist programs, and things like that. So I'm going to go into more kind of ancient history. The year was 1863. The American people had been engaged in a great civil war for 2 years. Iowa was to send some 76,000 men into this war, but back home life proceeded more normally. In fact, in July of 1863, only 11 days after the crucial Battle of Gettysburg, a group of 9 men came together in Muscatine to consider forming an organization to better themselves and the public, which they served. It was a small group, to be sure, considering that there were some 150 potential attendees. These men all came from eastern Iowa. The trip from more distant parts of Iowa would have been arduous and time-consuming, but jealousy and fear probably kept many away. Not present at that meeting on July 14, 1863, was a young woman who had a business in the growing town of McGregor, Iowa, some 100 miles northeast of us. She was to make her mark within the next 3 years. This 30-year-old woman had already done some noteworthy things with her life. She was born in a log cabin in upstate New York to a poor family, the 7th of 10 children. Her mother had died when she was 10, and her stepmother when she was 12. At age 12, she enrolled in an academy, and at age 16, she became a teacher. She taught school for 10 years, and it was while living in a boarding house that she met a physician and became interested in medicine. She read medicine with him for a time. They used to talk like that, like you'd read law when you'd study law, and at his suggestion applied to the Eclectic Medical College in Cincinnati, Ohio. She received the response, "We do not accept women as students." The dean of the medical college suggested that she try dentistry instead. When she applied to the Ohio College of Dental Surgery in Cincinnati, she was told, "We do not take women students." Still determined, she tried to find a mentor. She went to office after office in Cincinnati, but was repeatedly turned down. None of the dentists wanted a chance that his reputation would be tarnished when it became known that he had taken in a woman. Finally, a sympathetic gentleman named Dr. Wardle agreed to take her into a preceptorship. She worked with him for 2 years without pay, taking in sewing in her small attic room to make money for her meals. She entered a set of dentures in a mechanics fair and won first prize. Now armed with this prize and the highest recommendation from Dr. Wardle, she again applied to the Ohio College of Dental Surgery. "We don't take women students," she was sternly told. So Dr. Wardle suggested that she, like so many young men of the day, open her own dental practice without the benefit of a dental degree. 1 month after she opened her door, the Civil War broke out and her business came to a standstill. With a loan of $100 secured from a friend, she moved to Bellevue, Iowa, and opened what was to become a successful dental practice. After practicing in Iowa for a time, she became known as the woman who pulls teeth. In 1862, she moved to McGregor, Iowa, a small town about 75 miles upriver from Bellevue. In McGregor, she set up her practice on the second floor of this building, which is now used as a residence and a hotel. It happens to be owned by the former pastor of my church in Iowa City. By the kindness and open-mindedness of the men of the Iowa State Dental Society, men such as Dr. Luman C. Ingersoll, Lucy Beeman Hobbs was invited to the Society's 1865 meeting and voted into membership, becoming the first woman in the world to become a member of a dental society. Due to the influence of and pressure exerted by the Iowa State Dental Society, Lucy Hobbs also became the first woman in the world to graduate from a dental school, the Ohio College of Dental Surgery. And also by invitation of the Iowa State Dental Society, Dr. Hobbs became the first woman to deliver a paper before a dental society. The small group of men who met in Muscatine on July 14, 1863, formed on that day, by the narrow vote of 5-4, the Iowa State Dental Society. By their determination, fortitude, and urging, the state of Iowa was to pass a Dental Practice Act, and the University of Iowa was to establish a dental department. These are 3 of the 9 men present at that first meeting. Thus begins our story. I'm going to tell you the stories of some other noteworthy individuals in the history of dentistry in Iowa. Many have figured very prominently in our history. I'll try to cover the significant events in the history as well as some important contemporary breakthroughs in dentistry. Generally, I'm going to present things to you in chronological order. Dr. Luman C. Ingersoll, later to become the first dean of the College of Dentistry, suggested that the term root be used to denote the portion of the tooth that is embedded in the bone instead of the term fang that had been used up until that time. In 1864, Dr. Sanford C. Barnum, a dentist in New York, introduced his rubber dam to the profession. As you can see, the rubber dam forceps used in his day was very similar to the forceps we now use. Barnum gave his rubber dam freely to the profession without any attempt to obtain any remuneration. About 45 years later, as I will discuss, quite a different approach was used when the gold inlay was introduced to the profession. This is an 1860s or 1870s vintage dental chair that is in our collection at the college. It was used during our centennial in 1982 as part of a display up in the link. Note the swan's neck and head on the ends of the armrests. And it talks about it being covered with plush or different kinds of options there. I won't read the whole thing or take time to do that. In 1871, Morrison introduced the first foot-powered dental drill. Some version of foot-powered drills was used in our dental school until at least 1918, probably into the 1920s. This is a picture of one of the early foot-powered drills. We have 2 or 3 of them in our collection. In 1870, at the urging of the Iowa State Dental Society, that was its former name, a bill was introduced in the Iowa legislature for the suppression of dental quackery and the encouragement of the scientific attainments of the profession of dentistry. The bill failed. At this time, there were 225 dentists in the state of Iowa. In 1872, a committee of 3 dentists appointed by the State Dental Society recommended to the medical faculty and the Board of Regents that a dental department capable of conferring the degree of Doctor of Dental Science be established. It failed to gain approval from the board. During this same year, a bill was introduced into the legislature for an act to, quote, ensure the better professional education of practitioners of dental surgery in the state of Iowa. It too failed. In 1874, another bill for a dental law was introduced, but it too was defeated. Finally, in 1882, the Iowa legislature passed the first dental law in Iowa. The law, entitled An Act to Ensure the Better Education of Practitioners of Dentistry in the State of Iowa, provided that the governor appoint a board of dental examiners, that all dentists register with the board within 6 months, that licenses be granted to those with degrees from reputable dental schools upon payment of a $1 fee, and that licenses be granted to those without degrees upon payment of a $2 fee and successful completion of an examination given by the board. Also in 1882, the Board of Regents was finally persuaded to approve the establishment of a dental department at the University of Iowa, granting an appropriation of $300 for this purpose. The dental department owed its existence to the efforts of a number of dedicated individuals of the Iowa State Dental Society. The dental program opened on October 11, 1882, as one of only 17 in the country. It had 14 students and 4 unpaid faculty members. These dental educators stressed the science of dentistry, trying to improve on the preceptor system of mechanical teaching. When the dental program opened in 1882, there were no entrance requirements. The curriculum consisted of a 5-month term with a vacation of 1 week during the holidays. The program ran from October until early March. After 2 such years, a student could graduate. The first dean was Dr. Luman C. Ingersoll. He served for 6 years from 1882 until 1888. He was known for his work with the Iowa legislature to encourage the formation of the dental department and for his work in dental nomenclature. In 1888, Dean Ingersoll was asked to resign after a university committee found a, quote, want of harmony, unquote, within the department and believed that perfect harmony could not be restored under the current faculty. The first building occupied by the dental department was South Hall, located on what we now call the Pentecrest. South Hall was built as a dormitory in 1861 and housed almost every department of the university at one time or another. Rooms were assigned to the dental department in the basement and were equipped with 15 barber chairs, 1 second-hand dental chair, and some used laboratory equipment. South Hall sat directly south of the old Capitol. In those days, an iron fence designed to keep stray cattle away from buildings surrounded the Pentecrest area. In 1883, 367 dentists were registered in Iowa, and only 27 of those were graduates of reputable colleges. In 1885, an entrance requirement of a good English education went into effect, so we finally had a requirement. As I present the entrance requirements, keep in mind that the requirements at Iowa were among the most stringent in the nation, and most dental schools followed them. What was meant by a good English education? Well, it was to be determined by presentation of a diploma from a, quote, reputable literary institution or other literary qualification, or in lieu of these, an examination in the English branches usually taught in high school. Very interesting. In 1887, Jessie Ritchie became the dental department's first female graduate. She was in a class of 24 students. The dental program had few women students in its early history and produced only 28 women graduates between the years of 1887 and 1906. When we look at the number of women graduates per decade, we find that after Jessie Ritchie's time, the numbers gradually declined, with only 3 women graduating between 1927 and 1944. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, the number of women enrolled in the program increased dramatically, so that 30 to 40, even 50% of each class was made up of women, perhaps even more than 50 in some of the classes. In 1888, when the Board of Regents asked for Dr. Ingersoll's resignation from the deanship, they assured him that this request did not cast any reflection upon his ability or his work. In his stead, Dr. Alfred Hunt was appointed dean, serving until 1896, when he too was asked to resign. Dr. Hunt served as one of the first 4 faculty members of the dental department and was, in fact, one of the first 8 students to graduate from the dental department in 1883. In 1889, the length of the dental curriculum was increased from 2 years of 5 months to 2 years of 6 months each. In 1890, the Venerable G.V. Black accepted the professorship of pathology and bacteriology in the dental department of the University of Iowa. He taught at Iowa for only 1 year. Like Abraham Lincoln, Dr. Black had very little formal education and was a self-taught man. He received 4 honorary doctoral degrees in his lifetime and practiced in Jacksonville, Illinois for many years. He made vast contributions to the field of dentistry. He became associated with Northwestern University in Chicago in the 1890s and became dean of the school, serving until he died suddenly in 1915. Of course, I have to ask the question, what does the GV stand for in G.V. Black's name? Well, the man's full name was Green Vardaman Black. No wonder he went by G.V. In 1891, the dental course was lengthened to 3 years of 6 months each from the previous 2 years of 6 months each. Here's a look at the Pentecrest in 1895. There's the old Capitol in the foreground, It was the year in which dentistry moved out of Old South Hall, the middle building. Here, and the building on the right, which was the building the farthest south of these three, was the medical building. It was to burn down 6 years later, taking Old South Hall with it. In 1895, the dental department moved into its second location, situated on the Penacrest north of North Hall, not to be confused with the present-day North Hall. For those of you who were in Iowa City up until the mid-1970s, Dr. Wells, you'll remember this, you may remember this building, which sat between present-day Jessup Hall and McBride Hall. In fact, it sat almost to the edge of the sidewalk that ran along Jefferson Street. The west wing of the building was added in about 1907. Later, this wing was demolished to make room for Jessup Hall, which was completed in 1924. Here's a view of the dental clinic around the year 1900. Note the skylights, which were very important for illumination. Good chairside lights did not exist in those days. Here's a view of the exterior of the dental building, perhaps taken in the 1970s, shortly before it was torn down. You can see a little piece of Jessup Hall on the far right of this image. The Penacrest looked like this in 1948. If you move your eyes from right to left from the old Capitol, you will be looking toward the north. North of the old Capitol are North Hall and then the dental building. In 1895, X-rays were discovered. The early pioneers subjected themselves to prolonged exposures and received many serious radiation injuries. This is one of the older X-ray units that our college has in its collection. You might be wondering, where is this collection? It's basically right down below us here in kind of a sub-basement. It's kind of in a dusty location. In 1896, Dean Hunt was asked to resign, like I told you, after being charged with misappropriation of departmental materials and funds for his own use. He then became a professor at the Chicago Dental College and later dean of the dental department of the University of Omaha. University President Charles Schaefer then began serving as interim dean, Schaefer Hall. It was said that only Schaefer and his son were running the entire university at that time. Schaefer died suddenly in 1898. Also in 1896, the dental curriculum was lengthened to 3 years of 9 months each. Previously, each of the 3 years was only 6 months long. In 1897, Dr. B.F. Philbrook, later described as an obscure dentist from Denison, Iowa, read a paper before the Iowa State Dental Society. His presentation described a system for casting gold inlays, quite unlike anything in use. At that time, any gold restorations were made of direct gold, or either swaged and then soldered on their occlusal surfaces. Later, upon finding a copy of his paper at the library of the University of Iowa College of Dentistry, it became important evidence used to defeat patents later obtained by Dr. William Taggart. And here's Dr. Taggart. In 1907, Dr. William Taggart, a prominent dentist from Illinois, delivered a lecture before a large audience in New York City. I think there were 450 people, whereas Philbrook's may have been a few handfuls. And he described a more elaborate casting process than Philbrook had used. His talk was accompanied by tremendous enthusiasm and applause. Taggart is widely heralded as the inventor of the cast gold process. After Taggart received numerous orders for his casting machine but was unable to make good on their delivery, he became frustrated and tried to enforce the process patents that he obtained. His agents demanded a small fee from every dentist who used his casting method, but most dentists refused to cough up the money. The machine pictured here is in our collection. A dental group was established to fight Taggart. Leaders of this group and the group's attorneys searched high and low to try to discover evidence of prior art. Finally, they heard of Dr. Philbrook's speech that had been delivered in Iowa in 1897. It was the discovery of Philbrook's paper at the library and its later submission as evidence in court that led to the defeat of Taggart's patents in 1915. Although Taggart was widely castigated by the profession for trying to enforce his patents, Dr. George Hollenbach, that's our Hollenbach carver, from USC in California, to honor Taggart, produced these bronze plaques. We have one of them in our little place here. Taggart was ruined financially from all his legal expenses, and he died basically penniless. Was buried in Freeport, Illinois in 1933. I will now trace for you the history of dental education in the state of Iowa that you may not be aware of. Of course, we know that the University of Iowa's dental department began in 1882. In 1897, the dental department of Keokuk Medical College began. In that same year, the Des Moines College of Dental Surgery was organized. We had 3 going then. And in 1901, the Drake University Dental College began. So we had 4 schools. But in that same year, the Des Moines College of Dental Surgery program merged into the Drake program. Then in 1908, the Keokuk Dental College merged with Drake University. And finally, in 1913, the Drake University's program merged with the University of Iowa. And since that year, there's only been the University of Iowa. So that's quite a deal. In 1897, the entrance requirement for admission to the dental program was increased to the completion of grammar school. In 1898, Dr. William Hosford became the 4th dean of the dental department. He remained in the deanship until 1913. Like the deans before him, his deanship appointment was only a part-time one. In 1899, the requirement for admission was raised to the completion of 1 year of high school. By 1900, by action of the Board of Regents, the dental department became the College of Dentistry. And in that same year, an Iowa law was passed stipulating that anyone entering into the practice of dentistry in Iowa after the year 1900 must hold the DDS degree. The requirement to the college was raised to 2 years of high school work in 1902. In 1906, the admission requirement rose to 3 years of high school work. At this time, there were still many proprietary dental schools in operation in the United States. These schools were established to operate for a profit. Many of them were questionable, many poor, and some were downright unscrupulous. This helps to explain why board examinations had been established, so that the incompetents could be screened out. Many of these proprietary schools sidestepped admission procedures by adopting broad interpretations of the admission requirements. But you should also know that some of the proprietary schools were on the up and up and were interested in turning out good dentists. I don't know how many, but the state of New York has taken a new approach to the dental license board situation in recent years. You've probably heard this. This state has thrown out its board requirement and replaced it with a 1-year dental residency program as the only prerequisite for licensure. Will this eventually become the norm in the entire country or something like it? Only time will tell. By 1906, it was recognized that the dental building, although only 11 years old, had become an inadequate facility. In 1909, Rufus P. Bashirs became the first African-American graduate of the College of Dentistry. At this time, there were 2 schools of dentistry in the United States that were established for the education of African Americans, the dental programs of Howard University and Meharry University, and they're both still in operation. Also in 1909, the admission requirement was raised to 4 years of high school work. This was stated as 4 years of high school work with 30 credits or a minimum of 27 credits on condition from any high school. I don't know what that's trying to say, but in 1913, Dr. Thomas McClernand, as opposed to McLaren, right, became the 5th dean in about September. After only a 3-month tenure, he suddenly resigned. Ironically, he was the first full-time dean to be hired by the college. In researching him at our university archives at the main library, I found that being dissatisfied with the situation at Iowa, he appears to have felt humiliated by being forced to take the state board examination, even though he possessed licenses in many states and was a practitioner of much experience. Early in 1914, Dr. Frank Breen was named the 6th dean of the college. He had been a longtime faculty member and had both DDS and MD degrees from the University of Iowa. Dr. Breen, like Dr. Hosford before him, maintained a downtown dental practice, and his appointment as dean was only a half-time position. Dr. Breen immediately began working toward the construction of a new dental building. In 1917, the minimum requirement for admission to the dental program was raised to the possession of a high school diploma. In the fall of 1917, the new dental building was completed. This remained home for the College of Dentistry for about 55 years. Today it is occupied by the Department of Geology and is known as Trowbridge Hall. Can you picture where that is? On the top of the Market Street Hill, just south of the chemistry building. It was in this building that Drs. Dennehy, whom you know, and Fuller played darts, using a target placed on the inside of their office door. Those familiar with this practice would enter with caution. Those unfamiliar, like Dean Galligan, might end up with a surprise. This is the huge clinic floor of the dental building. No privacy cubicles here. The clinic floor was called the dental infirmary. It was equipped with some 130 dental chairs. It was so hot during the summer that the clinic was shut down, save for emergency service. No air conditioning, not even fans blowing over blocks of ice. A new dental building opened at the University of Illinois in Chicago in 1913, equipped with the latest electric drills. But the University of Iowa's clinic shown here, which opened in 1918, used foot-powered drills. You can see one of them right here in the foreground on the right here. Is that because we were just a bunch of hicks out in corn country? Don't know. But that's what we had. Patient dental lights similar to those used today would not come on the market until the 1930s or 40s. So you can see the gooseneck incandescent type lights in use here. There's one of them on the foreground in the left. A great deal of natural light was utilized with a large window area on the north side of the infirmary. So they got a lot of light that way. They had a mezzanine level that had pedo orthodontics, I think. But most everything occurred on this one floor. In 1917, the length of the dental curriculum was increased from 3 years of 9 months each to 4 years of 9 months each, which is pretty close to where we are right now. I think we have, let's say, 10 months each. In 1921, the entrance requirement for students was increased to 1 year of college work. This is William Gies. An interesting little story here. In 1922, an agency of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, to become known as the Gies Committee, visited the Iowa campus to study our dental program. The Gies Committee did an exhaustive study of all of the dental schools in the United States and Canada and finally issued its report in 1926. The Flexner report, I think it was about 1912, was done with medical education. And when they came through here, they recommended that this medical school be closed. It was so bad. But things went very well for it in the future, and of course it's here today. But this was a similar type of thing as the Flexner report. Well, Gies was not a dentist. He was intimately associated with dentistry. He was a highly respected professor of biochemistry at Columbia University. And in 1916, he had made a scathing attack on the proprietary dental journals of the day. Notable among these was the Dental Cosmos, once probably the leading dental journal in the world. His attack was based on his assertion that a dental company should not own a dental journal like the Dental Cosmos that was owned by the S.S. White Dental Manufacturing Company. He felt that too much bias could be exercised through the editorial department and the advertising in such journals. In 1919, it was Gies who founded the Journal of Dental Research. The recommendations from the Gies Committee were that all dental schools should be operated not for profit, should be affiliated with major universities, and there should be an increased emphasis on the scientific basis for dentistry. By 1930, the last proprietary dental school in the United States would close. It was in Texas. Here's a look at the oral diagnosis clinic in 1924. Again, a lot of natural light through the windows. Note the type of patient lights being used, just these big ceiling lights. The formal nurse-type uniforms being worn by dental assistants. The cuspidors seen were on virtually all dental units into the 1950s or 1960s. In 1924, flexible materials were starting to replace plaster for impressions. Around that time, agar compounds were suggested for use in dentistry. They would become the hydrocolloid and alginate materials that we use today. Also, synthetic resins were replacing the vulcanite denture materials that had been in use for 70 years or more. Upon Dr. Breen's death in 1931, Dr. Alvin Bryan became the college's 7th dean. He served for 20 years from 1932 until 1952 when he retired. Prior to becoming dean, Bryan was a faculty member in the college for 20 years. There was a museum in the formal dental building the one that's now called Trowbridge Hall. So they had class pictures, for example. I suspect quite a complete collection on this deal here. A lot of these artifacts we have down below. Many of them have been lost. Here's another view of the museum. One of the faculty members who served as the museum director, amongst other things, went around the state collecting these old dental chairs. They were discarded when the move was made to our present building. In 1936, the requirement for admission was changed from 1 year of college to 1 year of liberal arts studies. Not much of an apparent change. However, only the next year, in 1937, the entrance requirement became 2 years of collegiate liberal arts studies. And I don't know whether they specified certain things like chemistry and how that worked, but it was to remain so for the next 30 years, as far as 2 years. In 1952, Dr. Bill Simon, former head of the Department of Operative Dentistry at the University of Minnesota, was named the 8th dean, and he served until his resignation in 1961. Was this your dean, Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Okay, I got it right. Until about the 1960s, and I want to ask Dr. Wells this too, in the dental anatomy course, each student carved his or her own teeth out of something. Was it cow bone? Was it plastic? But they were carved out of... It was bone, and this is a set of teeth that Dr. Wally Johnson gave me when he retired. Can you imagine the time it took to carve these teeth? And then during the operative dentistry technique course, you can imagine the care that was taken in doing the preparations. You couldn't go back to Janet and just get another tooth. Shortly after Dr. Simon assumed the deanship, the dental hygiene department was founded. Due to its minimum admission requirements of only a high school diploma, the first class had over a 35% failure rate. However, the program made good progress, ran for over 40 years, but was finally closed in the mid-1990s. One of the most notable breakthroughs in all of dentistry came in 1957 with the introduction of the Borden air rotor high-speed handpiece. Almost overnight, it revolutionized the practice of dentistry, permitting cutting speeds of several 100,000 RPM from the previous 20 to 30,000 RPM. But dental schools were slow to adopt them. There were initial concerns that dental pulps would be killed like crazy, but a plethora of studies showed that such was not the case, especially when a liberal amount of water was used as a coolant. When I worked in the dental clinics as a student in the University of Illinois in the late 1960s, I used a belt-driven high-speed handpiece, not an air rotor, which had already been available for 11 years. So dental schools are not always the first places to adopt the latest technology. Dr. George Easton became the college's 9th dean in 1961, serving only until 1966. He was a longtime faculty member going back to 1925. He was an orthodontist. This is a view of the dental clinic as it appeared in 1963. Look how large the patient lights were at that time. The old belt-driven handpiece was still being used. There may have been air turbine high speeds added, but I can't make them out from this picture. They probably came a little later.
1967.
67. All right, good. Thanks. Another notable Iowa connection with dentistry was through John Naughton, who was a Des Moines chair maker, a lounge chair builder. Someone suggested to him that he build a dental chair. And so this was kind of the forerunner of what became known as the dental ease chair, kind of the forerunner of all modern chairs used for sit-down dentistry. And you recognize this chair in one of their ads probably it says 1970. It's the one that we have throughout the college and all of the clinics. In 1966, Dr. Donald Galligan became the 10th dean of the college. Previously, he had been with the Public Health Service and worked in Washington, D.C. He served until 1974 when he retired from the college to become the executive director of the AADS, now ADIA. One of my friends, now retired, felt that Dean Galligan helped bring the college out of its old style to become more progressive, develop more research programs, move the college ahead in general, thereby replacing the old guard. My best friend in Iowa City, along with Dr. Galligan's son, used to roll the family car out of the garage in the wee hours of the morning so that they would not wake up the parents. Then when they were in the street, they would start it up and away they went. They were underage drivers, of course. The requirement for entrance to the College of Dentistry was raised to 3 years of a liberal arts education at about 1967, although it remained at 2 years for many dental schools at that time. This 3-year requirement is in effect in Iowa today. On May 4th of 1970, National Guardsmen killed 4 students on the campus of Kent State University during a protest against the Vietnam War. This event precipitated student riots on the campus of the University of Iowa and places all over the country. Iowa Book and Supply used to be a lot different. They lost a lot of their glass. Now they've got these tiny little windows. A lot of other parts of the campus were affected. They were afraid they were going to burn down the National Guard building. And get this, faculty of the College of Dentistry were enlisted to carry baseball bats while patrolling the halls of the dental building overnight to protect the building in the event of a forcible entry. During Dean Galligan's tenure, the present dental science building was constructed, with the first classes beginning here in 1972 or early 1973. Here's another view during the construction of the building. On July 1st, 1974, James McLaren, an oral surgeon, became the 11th dean at the college. He would serve for 21 years until 1995 when he retired. In 1976, the Dow's Institute for Dental Research was created with private funds. In memory of their mother, Frances Dow's, Sutherland and Judith Dow's provided a 10-year pledge of support for the Institute using funds from the Sutherland and Frances M. Dow's trusts. This same year, the old dental building, erected in 1895, was demolished, thus removing the last of the old buildings from the Pentecrest and providing for symmetry on the Pentecrest. The filling station, our collegiate cafeteria, was opened in 1987, so that's 20 years, isn't it? And it's remained very popular. In 1995, Dr. David Johnson became the 12th dean at our college. He is a pediatric dentist and had most recently been at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. A decision was made to refurbish all of our 1973 patient chairs rather than to replace them. So they had a crew come in here and they put new naugahyde on all the chairs and refurbished them. They look just great. They're really good chairs. They're the good dental ease chairs with the 3 motors in them. I don't know what we'll do with the impending remodel that's coming up in 5 years or whatever. I think I can safely say that one of Dean Johnson's proud accomplishments has been the opening of the simulation clinic to replace the dated bench labs for freshman and sophomore instruction. Now students can avail themselves of modern simulators and electronic media. It has been an excellent venue for giving pre-recorded and live demonstrations via the individual monitors, and it contains realistic simulators for pre-patient experiences. So I'll bring this short history of the college to a close. In summary, the Iowa State Dental Society, now the Iowa Dental Association, was the driving force in the establishment of a dental program in the state of Iowa. Through the efforts of a number of individuals and a lot of perseverance, the dental department was approved. So too was it the efforts of these individuals that paid off in the establishment of a dental law to regulate dentistry in the state of Iowa. This graph shows the class size at the College of Dentistry over the years. You can see that during the first several years, class sizes were quite small. From about 1890 to 1950, there were some very large fluctuations in class size. And in a couple of years, around World War I, just over after, we had over 100 students per class. In the 1950 to 1973 period, it was very stable at around 55 per class. The present building was arranged to accommodate 96 students. That's why our big sophomore clinic floor has 96 cubicles. And we had that class size for a number of years. Then the class size was stepped down in 8s to 88, 80, 72. Today we stand at around 78. The University of Iowa has made many valuable contributions to the art and science of dentistry, many of which have not been covered, I realize, in this short presentation. There are a lot of them in this little booklet that's in the back. In spite of our relatively small population base from which to obtain a good patient pool, our college has remained vital. We remain one of the leading dental schools in the nation, and our future indeed looks bright. Thank you.